Welcome, one and all, to the SpareTalk News Network. Your host, Rod Weaver, will be up momentarily as he gets ready for his one-on-one interactive podcast to kick things off. So, sit back and enjoy. And now, on with the show.
For the show, everyone. Today we're diving headfirst into a topic that every bowler, from league night warriors to seasoned pros, grapples with: handling pressure. You know those moments, right? The 10th frame, a packed house, everything on the line. How do you keep your cool? I'm absolutely thrilled to have a fantastic guest with us today who knows a thing or two about staying clutch. Please welcome Colleen.
Thanks, Rod. It's great to be here. And you hit the nail on the head. Pressure is universal in this sport. It doesn't matter your skill level. Those moments come for everyone.
Absolutely. So, Colleen, let's just jump right into it. When you're in those white-knuckle situations on the lanes, maybe a tight match, a championship round, what's your go-to strategy? How do you mentally approach it?
It's funny, Rod, because a lot of people expect some complex, secret technique. But for me, it really boils down to something deceptively simple. I double down on my basics. I mean, truly concentrate on them. I try to block out the situation of the game entirely. I don't look at the scoreboard. I don't think about what the opponent just did, or what's at stake. Instead, I tell myself, I have a job to do. My job is to execute my shot, focusing purely on my approach, my release, my target. It's almost like I'm tricking my brain into thinking it's just practice, or the first frame of a casual game.
That's a really interesting perspective. I have a job to do. It compartmentalizes the pressure, doesn't it? Instead of feeling the weight of the entire game, you're just focused on the task at hand, which is, ironically, the only thing you can control.
Exactly. Because what else can you do? You can't control if the pins stand or fall in a weird way, or what your opponent does. All you control is that 15 feet of approach and that moment of release. If I can nail that, then I've done my part. The outcome at that point is almost secondary. It's about performing the best I can, regardless of the stakes.
I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that. We've all been there where the moment feels too big and suddenly your arms feel like lead, or you rush your shot. Bob Learn Jr., a former professional 10-pin bowler, talked a lot about this in his article, Handling Pressure is All in Your Head. He mentioned having 63 perfect games and sanctioned in PBA competition, which is just mind-boggling. But even he admitted he's had his share of 298s and 299s. He essentially says that while some people are just naturally calm, others are hyper, and that's just their psychological makeup.
Oh, absolutely. I've read that article. It's brilliant. Learn Jr. hits on a crucial point. Personality plays a huge role. I've seen bowlers who are just naturally Mr. Clutch, unflappable, and then there are others, like myself sometimes, who have to actively work at it. That's why my back-to-basics mantra is so important. It's my personal way of countering that hyper tendency or the jitters that can creep in, especially when the stakes are high. It's about consciously shifting your focus.
He also talked about how he wasn't always as poised as he seemed later in his career. His first 300, he was 18, and everyone knew he was a hotshot junior. He was matched against the best bowler in town, Pat Malone, and was really nervous. But he had confidence his ball would carry, even if the shot wasn't perfect. He mentioned he tends to speed up under pressure, which isn't always bad for him. That confidence, giving the ball plenty of room, helped him get that first perfect game. So it's not about being a robot, it's about harnessing those tendencies.
That's so true, Rod. It's about self-awareness, knowing your own tendencies, like speeding up, and finding a way to make them work for you, or at least not against you. For me, focusing on the basics slows everything down. It's a mental pause button. And knowing your equipment, knowing what your ball will do, that's huge. It reduces the number of variables you're mentally juggling.
Right. You're not thinking, oh my gosh, what if this pin stands? You're thinking, okay, I need to hit this mark with this release, trusting that the ball will do its job if you do yours. Now let's get into an even more intense scenario, one that really tests the bowler's mental fortitude. Imagine you're in a championship, head-to-head format, final game, and it comes down to the 10th frame. You have the option to bowl first or last. What's your take on that, Colleen?
Oh, that's a classic. And honestly, Rod, I believe it really depends on how a bowler feels at that exact moment. There are advantages and disadvantages to both strategies. If you bowl first, you set the mark, you put the pressure on your opponent. You control the narrative in a way. But you also don't know exactly what you need. If you bowl last, you know precisely what you have to do to win, which can be a huge mental advantage. But it also means carrying the weight of the entire match, watching your opponent, and potentially seeing them put up a huge score. It's a tough call, and I think it's deeply personal.
That's a very diplomatic and insightful answer, Colleen. And I agree, it is incredibly personal. In my book, More Than Just a Game, I actually delve into this exact scenario from my duck pin days. It's a question I've pondered a lot, especially after I stepped back from competitive bowling in the mid-90s, but even more so during my prime.
I'd love to hear your philosophy on that, Rod. I know duckpin has its own unique nuances, but the mental game is universal.
Well, in my prime years, I did have an ego, and I think that's okay to a certain extent. When a bowler reaches a level of satisfaction with their game, that extra confidence in oneself, that belief, it's essential. It fuels you. But my primary thought on that first or last choice was this. If I honestly felt I was the better bowler in that championship match, out of respect for the sanctity of the tournament, for the sport itself, I would choose to bowl last in the 10th frame. Because ultimately, that's what the spectators would like to see, isn't it? They want to see the better bowler roll the last ball of the tournament, win or lose. It's about delivering a show, a moment, and letting the best player rise to the occasion.
Wow, that's a very noble and almost chivalrous approach, Rod. It's putting the integrity of the game and the experience of the fans above your own immediate tactical advantage. I hadn't really thought of it quite like that before, but it makes a lot of sense. It's about respecting the moment.
Exactly. It's about more than just winning that specific game. It's about the legacy, the narrative. But I also had some caveats. If I felt the skill levels were about the same, but we were bowling on my opponent's home lanes, then my choice would be to let the opponent roll the last ball. The home crowd would likely prefer that, and it's a gesture of sportsmanship, acknowledging their support. You want to make it an event for them too.
That's a smart tactical and crowd-pleasing move. It can also subtly put pressure on them. They want to deliver for their home crowd, and sometimes that extra layer of expectation can be a burden. So you're almost deferring, but with a purpose.
Precisely. And then, obviously, if I felt that my opponent was clearly the superior player, someone like a 10-time champion or a well-respected Hall of Famer, then I would absolutely opt to let them roll the last ball of the tournament. You want to see the best of the best perform when it matters most, and it's a sign of respect for their dominance. It's almost saying, go ahead, show us why you're the champion.
That's a very mature perspective, Rod. It really highlights that bowling, especially at the highest levels, isn't just about strikes and spares. It's a psychological chess match, and it's also about sportsmanship and the larger narrative of the game. It's an interesting contrast to the just do your job mentality, because your job in that moment takes on a deeper meaning.
It does, it really does. And bringing it back to Bob Learn Jr. and the PBA Tour, he touched on other mind tricks he tried. He recalled going for his first PBA championship and seeing Dave D'Entremont as his opponent. He was glad because he'd bowled Dave many times in regional tournaments. Sometimes he won, sometimes Dave did. But the important thing was it allowed him to think of the $150,000 Fairlanes Open as just another regional final, just him and Dave again. He essentially used a mental reframing technique to make the stakes feel smaller, more manageable.
That's a perfect example of what I mean by blocking out the situation. Learn Jr. didn't ignore the fact it was a championship, but he deliberately chose to focus on a familiar aspect, the opponent, and recategorize the event in his mind. Just me and Dave again is an incredibly powerful mental shortcut to reduce pressure. It aligns perfectly with focusing on your job, because his job was to beat Dave, just like any other regional.
Exactly. And he started with a double, a spare, then a three-bagger, eventually winning 253-163, so it clearly worked for him. He said he didn't know how much he fooled himself, but it got him off to a good start. It shows the power of those mental cues. He also talked about the common advice, just bowl one frame at a time. He found that difficult, even calling it being a zombie. He said most of us start thinking about 300 if we have 4 or 5 strikes, so how are you going to pretend it isn't happening?
Oh, that's so relatable. I've tried the one frame at a time mantra, and it's tough. Your brain is wired to recognize patterns, to anticipate. When you're on a roll, your mind naturally starts calculating. You can't just switch that off. What I try to do, and it sounds similar to Learn Jr.'s approach, is acknowledge it, but then immediately bring my focus back to my process. So, okay, that was a great shot. Good. Now for this shot, what's my mark, what's my target? It's a quick acknowledgement, then a firm redirect back to the job at hand. You're not ignoring the streak, you're just not letting it hijack your focus for the next critical shot.
That's a crucial distinction, Colleen. It's not about being a zombie and pretending you don't know what's happening. It's about acknowledging the moment, but not letting it overwhelm your execution. Learn Jr. also talked about other emotions like self-pity and dealing with bad breaks. He mentioned being amazed at pros like Brian Voss and Tommy Baker, who always looked cool, even after a tough tap, and could even laugh about it. But he admitted that wasn't him. A solid 10-pin in a close match would hurt and make him mad at himself, even if he felt he made a good shot.
Self-pity is a massive trap in bowling. It's so easy to fall into that why me mentality when you get a cruel tap or a bad carry, and it's contagious. It can quickly unravel your entire game. I'm definitely more like Learn Jr. than Voss or Baker in that regard. My initial reaction is frustration, but the difference between a good bowler and a great one, I think, is how quickly you can recover from that. You get your moment of frustration, maybe a sigh, but then it's back to the basics. You have to let it go. Holding on to that anger or self-pity just guarantees more bad shots.
He highlighted that sometimes just a couple of strikes can mean the difference between $1,000 and zero on the tour. So those taps, those bad breaks, they really sting. He summed it up by saying, realistically, of course, you know that the luck evens out after a while. Take the good breaks when they happen, and don't apologize, because before long you'll miss a perfect shot, and it will break your heart. That's bowling, friend.
That's such a profound and honest truth about the sport. It is, Rod, and it's something every bowler, amateur or pro, needs to internalize. Luck is part of the game. You'll get your share of good breaks, and you'll get your share of bad ones. The key is not to let the bad ones define your next shot, or your next frame, or your entire day. You have to ride the waves, celebrate the good, acknowledge the bad, and then reset. That resilience is a huge part of handling pressure.
So Colleen, let's tie some of this together. For someone listening who consistently struggles with pressure, what are some tangible steps they can take, building on your back to basics and blocking out the situation approach, and perhaps even incorporating some of Learn Jr.'s insights?
Okay, definitely. First, know your own game inside and out. Understand your tendencies. Do you speed up? Do you grip the ball tighter? Knowing these things allows you to develop specific countermeasures. Second, define your basics. What are the 2-3 absolute fundamental steps in your approach and release that, when done correctly, lead to a good shot? For me, it's consistent footwork, a smooth backswing, and hitting my target. When pressure mounts, I repeat those things in my head. Third, practice under pressure. Simulate league or tournament conditions in your practice sessions. Don't just throw balls. Imagine it's the 10th frame you need a strike. Get comfortable with that feeling. Fourth, reframing. Like Learn Jr. did, can you reframe a high-stakes moment into something more familiar or less threatening? Maybe it's just me and the pins, not me and the championship. And finally, develop a quick reset button for bad breaks. Acknowledge the frustration, take a deep breath, and then consciously tell yourself, that's gone, what's next? Don't let one bad frame become 2 or 3.
Those are fantastic, actionable tips, Colleen. I'd add to that the idea of pre-shot routine. A consistent pre-shot routine is your sanctuary. It's the one thing that remains constant no matter the situation. It's a mental and physical checklist that signals to your brain, okay, it's go time, but we're doing it our way. That routine can be your basics in action, and it helps block out all the external noise.
Absolutely, Rod. The pre-shot routine is critical. It creates that consistency and brings you back to your anchor, no matter how chaotic the environment feels. It's your personal rhythm.
And on the sportsmanship front, while maybe not directly pressure handling in the moment of your own shot, understanding the broader context, as I outlined with my championship choices, can actually alleviate some pressure. It changes the mindset from, I have to win this at all costs, to I want to perform my best and contribute to a great match. That subtle shift can free you up a bit.
That's a brilliant point, Rod. When you elevate your perspective beyond just your own score, it can lighten the emotional load. It becomes less about personal glory and more about the love of the game, which can be incredibly liberating.
It truly can. And for all of us, remembering what Bob Learn Jr. said, the luck evens out. You're going to get bad breaks, you're going to get good breaks. The best thing you can do is control your reaction and your next shot. Colleen, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. Your practical approach to focusing on the basics, combined with Learn Jr.'s candid honesty about the mental game, and my own philosophy on sportsmanship, really paints a complete picture of what it takes to thrive under pressure.
I've absolutely loved it, Rod. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I hope our listeners take away some valuable tools for their own game. It's a journey, learning to manage pressure, but it's one that makes the victories, and even the tough losses, so much more meaningful.
Well said, Colleen. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. To all our listeners, remember, the mental game is just as important as the physical. Keep practicing, keep focusing on your basics, and keep that competitive spirit alive, all while respecting the game and your fellow bowlers. Until next time, keep those strikes coming, and we'll see you on the lanes.
From the Danville Register from the year 2002, construction of Boston Tunnel turns up artifacts. The lopsided grapefruit-sized ball of lathe-turned oak may not seem like much at first glance, but look a little closer. Like most of the artifacts at the Massachusetts Archives and Commonwealth Museum, from marriage and birth records to lists of Civil War regiments and newly arrived immigrants, it has a story to tell. The ball, uncovered by archaeologists working on the Big Dig, came from the spot where Catherine Nanny Naylor's house once stood in downtown Boston in the latter half of the 17th century. It turned out to be the oldest known bowling ball discovered in North America, likely used for lawn bowling, an early version of the modern game, minus the colored shoes and monogrammed shirts. But the story doesn't end there. Archaeologists dated the ball to the 1660s, a full decade after Puritan leaders outlawed public bowling, fearing it might be a corrupting influence. Historians say the ball, probably used for private, indoor games, offers a glimpse into the complex nature of the city's austere colonial years. The bowling ball is one of dozens of artifacts recovered during the construction of the Central Artery Third Harbor Tunnel project, the Big Dig, which dug a huge trench through the heart of Boston. Those artifacts, from shards of pottery and glass to early pin cushions, combs, pipes, buckles, and Native American spear points, are on display at the Commonwealth Museum, part of the archives. For 11-year-old Ronell Arnold, a fifth-grade student at the Devers School in Boston, the chunks of millstones and ragged boots help bring history to life. We're learning about the past. Ronell says, "It's fun to learn about what the archaeologists do." Arnold's teacher, John Rose, said the hands-on experience is especially important for students who have a tougher time getting an appreciation of history in the classroom. They can read about it in books, but when they can really dig into it is when they learn. He says, about 20,000 school children have toured the exhibit since the summer of 1999, according to Stephen Kenny, director of the Commonwealth Museum. The exhibit is scheduled to last for at least another year. A second exhibit looks at the state's role in the Civil War and includes telegrams requesting additional troops, transcriptions of battlefield letters and documents related to the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, which proved to the rest of the nation the bravery of African American soldiers. In January, the museum plans to replace the exhibit with a look at the 1927 trial and execution of Nicholas Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. While the museum offers formal exhibits, the Massachusetts Archives gives researchers and ordinary citizens a chance to rummage around in the state's history, viewing everything from personal records to the paper trails created by dozens of state and local boards. The archives are particularly important to people trying to create family histories. Kenny says, the archives, under the auspices of the Secretary of State's office, even produces a free handbook to help amateur family history buffs. In addition to birth and death records, researchers can scour passenger lists of immigrants who arrived in the port of Boston, military records dating back to the mid-1600s, judicial records, census records, and records kept by public welfare, mental health, and other state institutions. It's one of the most popular resources we have. Kenny says, people come from all over to research their ancestors. From the year 2007 in the Potomac News, Williams secures 44th Tour title. Walter Ray Williams, Jr. of Ocala, Florida, earned his 44th career Denny's Professional Bowlers Association National Tour title when he won the Great Lakes Classic at Spectrum Lanes in Wyoming, Michigan, November 28th to December 2nd. In the championship round, Williams drubbed Chris Loscheter of Avon, Ohio, 276 to 204, and claimed the $25,000 purse. Loscheter collected the second-place prize worth $13,000. There were 5 perfect 300 games rolled during the tournament. Mitch Beasley, Parker Bone III, Billy Oatman, Edward Van Daniker Jr., and Walter Ray Williams Jr. From the year 1968 in the Sacramento Union, Words Don't Alter Sport by George Glavis. Did you know that there is a campaign to change the language of bowling? The whole matter came to my attention when I was told that distaff bowling officials in some quarters were being fined for using certain taboo words. It was explained that such changes are necessary because the language of old does not fit today's new image of bowling. Let's take a look and see how much bowling alleys have changed over the years. Bowling alleys are bigger today and are primarily located in residential rather than downtown areas so as to take advantage of population concentrations. Their decor has improved considerably, and the din associated with the alleys of yesteryear has been greatly reduced by fine acoustics. An improved lighting system is also responsible for eliminating the dark and dreary look that so many felt was part of every bowling alley. Those who have been kegling for some time will recall the complaints about the stuffy, reeky and dim bars and the fumy and shadowy pool rooms. Not much has changed here. All major bowling alleys have bars which are larger but still dimly lit and reeky at times. They now call them cocktail lounges. Pool rooms are still there and larger too. Expansive fluorescent fixtures have replaced the old-time low-hanging lamps, and the pool room is called the family billiard center. With the number of kids playing the game and smoking, nowadays the pool room can still become very smoky. In reality, the bowling alleys of yesterday had almost the same things they have now. The difference is that bowling alleys now are much more plush, are no longer the sole haven for men, have childcare facilities, and due to long and good promotion, have become the family recreation center. Now back to the vocabulary changes in the foregoing discourse. I use the term bowling alley several times. Today's missionaries of change shudder when they hear it. They prefer the use of such words as lanes, centers, houses, and establishments. Even these words are offensive to some people and mean something entirely apart from bowling. The word house, especially, has an unfavorable implication, and today's youth seem intent on overthrowing the establishment, and that word is a challenge to them. The word alley was applied to bowling buildings because the word means a narrow lane or path, and that is precisely what a bowling lane is. Nothing unclean was meant by that description. Some proposed phrase changes include calling the gutter a channel and the pit a receptacle. A channel has been generally accepted to mean a waterway, and we can't see a channel in a bowling alley except when tears flow over bad games and series. And what do you think of when you hear the word receptacle? How about wastebaskets, spittoons, and other containers? To most of us, it means anything but the pit in which our bowling balls roll. The latest new term coming to our attention is in reference to sandbaggers. They aren't sandbaggers anymore. They are average manipulators. This is an apt description, but it certainly doesn't seem to have the same impact as sandbagger. Dropping this word from the bowling dictionary is like calling baseballs spitball a salivate ball and changing footballs clipping charge to bobbing. By now it's obvious that we oppose the whole idea of ridding our sport of some of its most colorful and descriptive prose. Changes are necessary in many things, we admit, but sometimes they go too far. Alley, pit, gutter, and sandbagger are words that belong in our bowling lingo, and they certainly are not harmful to bowling's image, as we are led to believe. The possible results of this campaign are too ridiculous to imagine. Instead of eliminating so-called objectionable words, we should curb and eliminate those people and conditions which really do harm our sport of bowling and all the other sports. Let's put our efforts to useful projects. From the Sunday Oregonian in the year 1968. How about room with bowling motif? Ever thought of having a room in the house, perhaps the den, sporting a complete bowling motif? A first in the world of wallpaper was claimed by the Pageant Wallpaper Corporation with the recent introduction of its Sport and Life collection of vinyl wall coverings, whose themes include such sports as bowling, boating, tennis, and golf. Dick Weber, all-time money winner on the Pro Tour, is one who has had a specially designed room in bowling theme naturally. Weber's room has the bowling motif wallpaper, with bowling pins and balls in a floating atmosphere in black and apple green, with apple green carpeting and an ebony leather chaise. Favorite trophies, top clear plastic bases. Bowling pins serve as a base for a glass coffee table, and are repeated as a lamp base on the console table. Other rooms with sporty backgrounds in the recent New York showing were designed for television personality Hugh Downs and stage and screen star Barbra Streisand. It's a little late for a Christmas gift idea this year, but for those who go for wild ideas, one has to admit the Sport and Life wallpaper is a little different. From the Portland Press-Herald in the year 1966, Bay State bowler will tackle candlepin endurance record, a candlepin bowling marathon-minded. Dorchester, Massachusetts lightweight will try to topple more timber in 24 hours than the legendary Paul Bunyan. Where the giant of the Maine woods had a mighty keen axe, the 135-pound Ed Fallon must rely on a wiry right arm to whip into the strike zone a fast ball weighing 2 pounds 4.5 ounces. Fallon is gunning for 200 strings and an average of at least 100. He will fire the first ball at 9:15 p.m. Thursday at the Lucky Strike Lanes, Dorchester. His last ball, which may be little more than a lob, hopefully will find its way to the pin pocket 24 hours later. Longest sustained lane effort, according to the World Candlepin Bowling Council, is the 148 strings rolled in a 15-hour, 20-minute stretch by William Sipp at Winchester, Massachusetts Bowlodrome. On April 21, 1962, Sipp knocked down 14,614 pins and averaged 98+. Like the Japanese and Korean runners who have dominated recent BAA marathons, Fallon is favored for endurance by a wispy 5-foot 5-inch frame. He has been swinging down the lane 17 of his 30 years. His league high single is 160 and his high three strings 417. Thriving on action, he is now bowling in 2 leagues. Fallon is averaging 111.8 with the Lucky Strikehouse League and 113 with the Industrial League of Quincy. He averaged 108 in the 1961 Massachusetts Bowling Association Professional League. Fallon bowls 25 to 30 strings weekly. Fallon's pin progress will be under constant scoring supervision by 2 house employees and a few durable spectators, according to Lucky Strike Lane spokesman Ronald Benigli. Benigli's father, Joe, is lane proprietor. Joe joined the Candlepin Bowling Hall of Fame last spring. Possibly the most proficient performance, if second to Sip in endurance, was the 101.23 average for 143 strings in 14 hours, 15 minutes by George Murphy in 1964 at Millinocket, Maine. Murphy didn't feel like dancing or running for the Senate after that endurance exercise. From the year 1961, in the Hamilton Spectator, late Sunday bowling poses police problem. Hamilton police want to prosecute a bowling alley for staying open Sunday night, but the Attorney General hasn't yet given them permission to lay a charge under the Lord's Day Act. Police Chief Len Lawrence told the Police Commission yesterday that the bowling alley was staying open until midnight Sunday. Ted Okulowski, solicitor for the Hamilton Bowling Alley Proprietors Association, said he has advised other bowling alleys that it is illegal for them to stay open after 6 p.m. Sunday. He said there was confusion over the required hours and asked the Police Commission to have city bylaws state definitely what the Sunday hours should be. The question was referred to the City Solicitor's Department for clarification. The Lord's Day Act permits bowling alleys to open between 1:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Sundays. If Hamilton states these hours in its town's Sunday bylaw, police would be able to prosecute without bothering about the Lord's Day Act. Mr. Okulowski said his clients had no real objection to the alley that stayed open on Sunday night, but they wanted to know if it was all right for them to do the same. The lawyer said the Attorney General apparently does not like to lay a charge under the Lord's Day Act unless a church group complains it is being disturbed. He said this applied to coin laundries, bowling alleys, and other Sunday businesses. After the meeting, Chief Lawrence said his department had written the Attorney General 4 weeks ago for leave to prosecute the bowling alley that stayed open Sunday night. My guess is that the Attorney General has been too busy to reply, the chief said. From the year 1967 in the Omaha World Herald, asked Joe Willman, if bowling ball hooks big, play for plenty of angle. The drawing shows the 2, 4, 5 spare today. It looks pretty innocent and simple. Yet I think many bowlers miss this spare because their angle is wrong for their bowling ball. For instance, bowlers with a strong hook often may see their bowling ball hook solidly into the number 2 pin and continue back into the number 4, but the number 5 pin is left untouched. In other cases, the opposite is true. The bowling ball does not hook enough, and it barely nudges the number 2 pin out to the left, around number 4. The ball hits number 5, but number 4 stands. Bowlers with wide-breaking hooks should make sure they get their ball out wide enough to the right. Use plenty of angle. The man whose hook isn't very big or very consistent should concentrate on firing a fairly straight ball into the 2-5 pocket. From the Tribune, in the year 1999, The Century's Best Christmas Present by Hubert Beyer. As the 20th century draws to a close, I think of the Christmas presents I received during the 64 years I shared with it. I have, of course, no recollection of any presents that must have been under the tree on Christmas Eve of 1935, but I'm sure my parents thought of something for their 9-month-old baby who had joined his 6-year-old brother the previous March. But I do remember a nifty present one Christmas when I was about 4. My Uncle Hubert, after whom I was named, had made these wonderful little table-sized bowling games for all the kids in the extended Beyer family. The gizmo was about 2 by 3 feet, resembling a large picture frame with green felt instead of a picture covered with a glass sheet. Laid flat on the table, it was supported at the 4 corners by short legs, each of which had a different height, which had the effect of funneling anything that rolled down the surface into one corner. Uncle Hubert had also carved 9 little bowling pins for each game and a spinning top. Given a good spin with thumb and forefinger at the upper end of bowling game, the little top would spin its way towards the other end and play havoc with the bowling pins. I suppose what makes this gift so memorable, after all these years, is the fact that it didn't come from a store. It was handmade with loving hands by my uncle. Another memorable Christmas present, one of which I have written before, was a small paper bag containing about 5 pounds of potatoes. A kind soul had left at our door on Christmas Eve in 1946, when hunger and privation was at its most brutal in post-war Germany. When I was about 16, I had just one wish: a guitar. According to our family tradition, to which I still adhere, my father picked each of the presents from under the tree and called out the recipient's name. I got quite a number of presents, but no guitar. And then my father asked me to get him a cigar from the box he said was in the bedroom closet. I found no cigar, but a beautiful guitar. As the years rushed by, there were many more beautiful presents, pictures drawn by our children, parcels from my parents half a world away. As I write this, Christmas is still a week away, but already I have received my greatest present ever. If not peace on earth, I rejoice in the fact that the nations of Europe, the continent of my birth, are forging a peaceful confederation. Growing up in Hitler's Germany, I was indoctrinated from an early age into believing that France was my archenemy. How could I doubt it? And even though as a 5-year-old I had no hand in turning Europe into an inferno, once more I paid for Hitler's bloodlust. As Canada continues to struggle with its unity, Europe, whose nations have confronted each other in armed conflict for centuries, is coming together in peace at last. My 5 nephews and their children now live in a Germany that is at peace with its neighbors. What's more, the European community is so intertwined and interdependent that no one nation can ever again wage war on its neighbors. And the list of countries wanting to join this noble and exciting experiment is growing. Bulgaria, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, and Malta have applied for membership. Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovenia, Estonia, and Cyprus are already in the queue. And Turkey is the latest candidate. No longer will German and French and English and Italian and Belgian and Dutch mothers have to bury their sons because hatred rears its ugly head. And as one who experienced the horrors of a divided Europe, this is my most wonderful Christmas present ever. From the Palm Beach Post in the year 1994, Florida's only duckpin lane shutting down. Fair Lanes Palm Springs, the only bowling center south of Virginia with duckpin lanes, is closing. Fair Lanes, which has about 120 centers nationwide with corporate offices in Baltimore, Maryland, notified Palm Springs' 18 employees last week that the center was being sold. It has been in financial difficulty for several years. Today is the last day for the 32-lane center, which opened in 1973. It reportedly will be razed for shopping center expansion and a parking lot for new restaurants. I hate to see it close, said Gold Coast Bowling Centers Association Executive Director Frank Santalella, the center's former manager. I learned the business at Fair Lanes. Once you lock the doors, studies show at least 10 to 15% of the bowlers put their balls in the closet and quit the game. If they can't bowl where they're used to bowling, they won't bowl at all. In 1988, Santalella convinced Fair Lanes to convert 8 of the 32 lanes to duckpins, but the concept never caught on as well as officials had hoped. A few bowlers drove from as far away as Broward County to compete in the Monday Night Southern Ducks League, but participation in that league and the Monday afternoon Palm Springers League for senior bowlers never lived up to expectations. John Denning, 74, had the high average in the afternoon league with a 124, and also bowled in the Southern Ducks League. I don't know what I will do on Mondays now, said Denning, who bowled duckpins in Maryland for 55 years before moving to Boynton Beach in 1992. I won't be bowling duckpins unless somebody can start a crusade to put them in at some other center. Duckpins are smaller than 10 pins. The balls, which have no holes, weigh 3 to 3.5 pounds compared with 6 to 16 pounds for regular pins. If I had a center, I would convert some lanes to duckpins in a heartbeat, said Santalella, who left Fair Lanes for a job at Sam Costas Riviera Lanes 2 weeks after the duckpin lanes were installed 6 years ago. There are thousands of potential duckpin bowlers who just didn't know it was there. It could be successful if it was promoted correctly. 10-pin bowling is a viable alternative for Denning, but not for Harvey Palmer, 97, a legally blind Monday afternoon regular. I hate to see the place close, Palmer said after Monday's farewell session. I don't think I could bowl 10 pins unless they have some really light balls. Fair Lanes is the second area center to close in 1994. Lake Worth Lanes closed last summer, but owner Billy Williams was able to move most of his employees, equipment, and leagues to his other center, 60 Lane Green Acres Bowl. I think duckpins could work, but it has to be marketed, right? Williams said, I have about 50 to 70 league bowlers on every lane bed. If I converted even 6 lanes to duck pins, we would have to get 500 to 600 duck pin bowlers to make it feasible. Palm Springs 10-pin league bowlers have been given the option of continuing their leagues at Fair Lanes, other area center in Boynton Beach, but most object to the extra miles they would have to drive. Greenacres Bowl is only 3.8 miles southwest of Fair Lanes and figures to pick up the bulk of the closing center's business. It's sad to see them close it, said former Professional Bowlers Association touring pro Ron Dixon, who is moving his Kegler's Corral Pro Shop from Palm Springs to Fair Lanes Boynton Beach and expects to be open by January 2nd. This is where I threw my first ball, had my first job, entered my first tournament, bowled my first 300. I am leaving part of my life here. This is where I learned to bowl, but now it's out of its misery.
Speaking for Rod Weaver, I'd like to inform you that SpareTalks, This Day in Bowling History, will be taking Christmas Day off on this coming Thursday. However, there will indeed be a one-on-one SpareTalk podcast on Christmas Day. SpareTalk will resume its normal agenda next Monday. Rod and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Well, I guess we've come to the end and we'll be wrapping it up for today. Thanks for stopping by and tuning in. As usual, if you haven't already done so and would like to be notified when future videos become available and are published, feel free to hit the subscribe button in the lower right corner of the videos or YouTube video screen. Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the upcoming Thursday or Friday. Take care.